Welcome back to We Time Convo. I'm your host, Debbie.
And I'm Hylan Vo. Get ready for another thought-provoking episode where we explore the trends, challenges, and innovations that are changing the way we live and work.
We're talking about AI, artificial intelligence. This is already reshaping how we do business and even how we think about our own personal life.
Exactly. In this episode, we'll be exploring how AI is not a tool, but a driving force behind the evolution of the workplace.
So, Hylan, do you use AI?
Of course I use AI.
You'd be surprised. There's some people out there who still can't figure it out. But you use it.
Yeah,
How often do you use it?
Daily.
What do you use it for?
I use it for a variety of things, but I would say the top is work. Second is personal.
Got it. I use AI every day now. If you were to talk to me a year ago, I'd have been like, what's that? But now, the more you use it, I think the more you realize how powerful it is and how much it can obviously help you. But there's also a downside to AI. Do you believe in the downside? Because some of the downsides is it kind of takes away your creativity and the way you think, and then the dependency on it. Do you agree with that?
I agree with that because I actually see the downside when I'm actually interacting with it. I feel like sometimes it's like shouting into a well. You hear it's like an echo chamber, of information. So AI is trained on information that's available, right? And without that information, it doesn't have the ability, at least right now, it doesn't have the ability to give you new and accurate information. And so when I'm working with it, I realize that sometimes it's giving me the wrong answers over and over.
Yeah. Or, it might not be as accurate or dated.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah. Or it just kind of trips over itself sometimes. And I definitely see that. And then, say for instance, with some of the things I'm doing for my business, like the mineral makeup business, I realize I'm like, it doesn't really know so much when it comes to certain niches out there. And so I still feel like there is value with work that people have to do and discover and research.
Yep. So I discovered AI because my sister introduced it to me, but also I didn't realize how big it was with the kids. And when I say kids, I'm talking about my, teenagers, nieces, nephews. Obviously, they're pretty well versed in it because they use it. But the downside is that they don't know enough sometimes to realize that to check the information. So
over-reliance.
Yes. So I feel like it's not a copy paste exercise. There definitely is, you have to have knowledge and experience to be able to ask it something. It spits out something. And then you have your knowledge and experience to read through it to say, yeah, that makes sense, or no, it doesn't. Versus I think when you don't have knowledge and experience and you rely on it and you do a copy paste, then that's the downside of it. Mm-hmm. Is that there's that heavy reliance without knowing exactly, is it accurate or not? And then I also feel like if you are lazy and you just do a copy paste, then you're definitely not getting the value of AI.
Yeah. And I think to your point, right, when you over rely on AI, I personally feel it inhibits you from building new skills, such as writing, creative thinking, critical thinking, because a lot of what AI can do really, really well is writing. Yes. And I feel like the younger population, what they use it for were schoolwork, writing, right? And even for me with marketing, right? I use it for writing, but I also, because I have already a background of writing, I can edit what it writes and then give it a format so that it follows my format that I know is effective. But I feel that if you're young and you don't have yet build those skills, then you can't over rely on it. And then at a detriment, you don't develop those skills yourself.
I completely agree. I'm kind of in that same bucket because sometimes I'll just use it just to, I'm tired and I have these thoughts and I'll just jumble it down and I'll say, okay, put it together. And then it'll put it together in a format that I'm like, oh yeah, But then I'm like, you know what? That's just like too formal for me. So like I'll make adjustments. But that's kind of where I use it sometimes is I have a whole bunch of thoughts and then it can help me kind of summarize that in a very clear and concise way. So I use it daily. I love it. But to your point, just making sure that there's not this heavy over reliance. But you know, the other thing too is in the workplace, depending on which company you're at, it's either at the forefront or I know some companies are already, you know, utilizing it, but there's the risk of like, what are you asking it? Is there anything confidential? Who has access to it? The security around it? Because again, it's a new tool, but how do you get comfortable that there's also the risk of others being able to tap into that data?
Yeah, I think data security, I come from Google, so I think data security is really important. And I think it's something that people should consider, right, when they use AI. Say, for instance, if you use like the consumer version of AI on like OpenAI, like ChatGPT, for instance, your data is kind of free to use. Whatever you input in there is free to use unless you actively opt out.
Yes.
You know, and like I am very aware of that. So I take that precaution when I use AI. Like
but a normal person might not.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. And, you know, the younger users
don't understand that. Well, that's the other thing too. We were just talking about like, again, you know, there's this younger generation that's using it. They're using it in their schoolwork. But when asked, you know, what is the educational system doing in order to educate our youth of using this tool? There really is no formal rollout. Usually, like, for example, at my work, we had a formal rollout. This was obviously what's identified as what you can use. And we have security built around that. And then they provided guidelines. Because our youth is using it so much, I would hope that they're also getting educated on it. And unfortunately, I don't think our educational system is up to where we're at now, that it's kind of missing the boat on our youth being able to utilize this tool effectively. Yeah. And the dangers around it.
Yeah, I think definitely education's behind technology, right? They're slower to adopt technology. And I definitely do think that, yeah, there has to be more education. I think AI companies have the education out there for you to learn, but oftentimes younger users and even like a lot of other users don't really look into the those resources to educate themselves before using AI.
Yeah, they just jump right into it, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I've also heard that AI is just as big as like when the internet came out. Do you believe that?
I think it's definitely a gold rush when it comes to technology, right? I think it opens the door to a lot of different opportunities to people who might not have those opportunities. Like, for instance, if you're building a small business like I am, I leverage AI to help me build, right? Everything from editing some of the code that I am not super like familiar with on the back end of my website, to, you know, helping me generate like SEO content like automatically. Yes. Like that to me is like a big plus. And then also to do copywriting for my products. I think if you were a small business owner, leveraging AI is such a big thing. And also if you want to start your own business, you can leverage AI to like
get asset,
ideas.
Right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It opens like a big number of doors, right? And then the type of businesses that use AI automation to sell it as a service has grown too. So I definitely think it's definitely a gold rush, but I also think there are like limitations to AI as well.
Well, the big concern that a lot of people have around AI is it's going to replace people.
I don't think people will ever be fully replaced because, you know, I personally think AI is like a super child, right? It only knows what you know, for at least right now. Maybe at some point it becomes robotic and it can do its own research and analysis. But right now it's limited to a desktop, right? And it's information in and information out. Like it only knows what you put in. And hence why I think data is so important, is that right now they're training AI on like publicly available information. But I personally think it, like new information is right now is being discovered by real humans, right? And like I mentioned, it's like an echo chamber. Sometimes it has inaccurate information or like not enough information to train on certain topics and niche, which I have found, right? And so I definitely think it's not replacing all people yet, but I think, say, logic-based or writing-based jobs, it is starting to replace
some aspects of it. Yes.
Some aspects.
Well, so it's here. It's coming. It's growing. It's like, if you're not using AI, what do you say to those people?
I personally think, you know, I mean, it's fine if you don't use AI, but if you are running a business, if you are working at a job, you know, and if you're doing research, it's definitely gives you like a competitive advantage above those who don't use AI.
Yes. I think we're only scratching the surface. Like for me, I'm probably using it just really writing an email or communicating something or just asking it kind of some structure. But like that's scratching the surface. I mean, a lot of people are looking at it, a visionary of like being able to help with the strategy of growing a business and like seeing those data analytics of like, here's the data, here's kind of the projection, and here's kind of the opportunities from a business perspective to be able to get leveraged.
Advice.
Yeah. So sometimes, like, again, I use it for work primarily, but sometimes there's like a personal issue and I'll actually ask AI like, hey, this is what's going on. Do you have any suggestions of how should I deal with it? And it actually provides some really good advice. Because like you said, right? I mean, the data that it's generating from is what's out there on the web. And so it collectively, and the web's vast, so it collectively gives you like, here's some things that you can consider in dealing with it. So I don't necessarily just use it for work. Sometimes I replace it for like that therapy session that
same. I have a AI called Therapist.
Oh, really?
Created. I think I mentioned this on the other podcast, but I have one that I kind of like engineered as a prompt that it's like a therapist and has like PhDs in psychotherapy, psychology, and all this stuff. And then I give it a lot of my background information in terms of my childhood and all that stuff.
So they have it like, yeah.
And then so I also use it as therapy, and every time I go ask it for like life advice and things like that, I go to the same chat, and so it has like an accumulation of all my information and also the things that I like programmed it to be like, because I think that's the key part, right? Is that part of the AI education too can like you can program the AI or like prompt it to make sure that it's like has a certain specialty into something, because like I said, when you think about like AI engineering, right, it's like a dump of information that they train it on. And so to actually get a more specialized like advice or answer, one way is through like prompt engineering or like creating a really specific prompt to then get it to be like the person you want it to the information to come from.
Yeah. So it's very catered to kind of those sets that you've inputted or the values. And then that way what it spits out isn't just kind of a generic response.
Yep.
Yeah. So no, I like I said, I use it every day. I can't imagine not using it anymore. But again, keeping in mind, like it's a tool. It shouldn't replace, again, the creativity, the knowledge base. It's not a copy paste exercise, but I definitely look forward to what else I can do with it. Because right now I think it's just very basic with the way I'm using it. But for our listeners out there that haven't used AI, I encourage you to just check it out. And the one time, the 2 times, the 3 times, do it a couple of times, because then you'll then figure out what this tool is, because you're not going to figure it out, I think, in that 1 or 2 times. You just got to kind of you keep using it. So that's my thing. Just, it's not a copy paste exercise, but it's definitely something that you guys should check out.
Yeah. And I also encourage to do your research. And there are a lot of resources out there, from everything from like Google Gemini to like ChatGPT to like people using it on like YouTube in various different ways. I highly recommend researching and watching like videos of how people are using it, and you'd be surprised at what ways you can start implementing it for, to take your life to a new level with AI.
Well, thanks, guys. Thanks, Hylan, for joining.
Thank you.